I'm Fiona Phillips. Tonight on Dispatches, I'm going to show you how Britain is failing the nearly 500,000 people with Alzheimer's. This is my family story. This is my dad. His name is Neville, but you like to be known as Phil, don't you?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and he's been in this flat for, I guess about 6 weeks now.
Yeah.
And we took a decision as a family to move him down here. He did live in Wales, which was taking us 7 hours one way, 7 hours back. My brothers and I have got family, jobs, all that sort of thing, so we wanted to move Dad near us.
And I was in the Fleet Air Arm.
You were in the Fleet Air Arm.
In the Fleet Air Arm. I
And
wish I was back there now.
And that's why he's in Portsmouth.
Be lovely.
And we sail down about nearly every weekend to see you, don't we?
Yeah.
To make sure you're okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I first realised my dad had Alzheimer's about a year ago. To be honest, he's probably been ill for a lot longer, but I just didn't pick up the signs. When I finally understood how ill he had become, I moved him from his house in Wales to this flat for elderly independent living in Portsmouth. You're using the toaster, but not for toast, for lighting your cigarettes up.
Oh, yeah, there you mean.
I wondered why it was all burnt at the top. I've been coming down every weekend from London to look after my dad. My situation reflects the stories of more than 500,000 unpaid Alzheimer's carers in the UK. The burden of looking after someone usually falls squarely on the family. And that's what's happened to us. When I'm not here, the care of my dad is taken up by his younger brother, my Uncle Barry. Hi, Uncle Barry. Nice to see you.
Hello, Neville. Hello.
He pops round 3 times a week to check up on him. So do you want a cup of tea or something, yeah? My dad now finds the everyday tasks difficult. Even making a cup of tea can be a struggle.
Cups.
Yeah.
Cups. Cups. All those are cups.
Yeah. And where's the tea, Dan?
Tea.
Yeah.
Tea.
Do you look at
yellow
your...
tea. What else have we got?
No, you got the milk, brilliant. Trouble is, you kept switching the fridge off, so I don't... Let me just smell it a minute. Do you think it?
I'll go and get some in a minute.
When you were in Wales, because you were switching the fridge off, you had food poisoning. You did, and it was a fish dish. Dad has just put tea, coffee and fruit juice in the same cup.
Coffee in there as well.
Coffee.
That's coffee. That's coffee tea. And
all together. They'll quickly get out of it. Are they all mad? All mad of them.
Yeah, we are all mad. We should be laughing, but it is.
We're all bloody mad anyway.
Oh dear. Right, I think I'm going to have something rather less exotic.
If you can find it.
I'm glad we can still have a laugh, but as the disease takes hold, the worries aren't funny. I spot some pills I haven't seen before on the kitchen worktop. Do you know what I've just noticed? There's tablets just lying around, and I don't know...
Well, they're not lying around, they were up together, there's only one out.
And what are they for?
They're for his fluid on the leg.
Fluid on the leg.
His leg's swollen up.
Have you been taking them?
Yeah, not too many though. Yeah.
How many are you supposed to take then?
It'll tell you somewhere. I do it with 1, 2, 3, 4.
You're supposed to take one every day, aren't you? So you've not been taking one every day?
No, I haven't.
And there's no supervision at all.
But they shouldn't just be left lying around here, should they?
No, but...
As well as Uncle Barry, I've organised a package of care for my dad. A nurse comes once a week. I pay for a hot meal to be delivered at lunchtime. And a care worker from social services comes round to make sure he eats it. But we're gradually finding out that Dad needs a lot more care than we can provide. Barry has noticed that my dad's personal hygiene is beginning to slip.
It's the other things they've got. He needs, you know, like making sure he shaves and make sure he has a bath. Because he's still not had a bath since...
Who hasn't?
When did you have a
Look in
bath?
there.
Well, when did you have a
Look in there.
Well, that's what happened next. I think the shower surprised you, didn't it?
I went up there, sat down, and oh, bloody hell! There,
What, round here?
there. It was hot. It was hot.
Yeah.
You burnt yourself. That's why your skin's all wrinkled up.
I'm also concerned that my dad sometimes gets lost in the local area, so I've written his address on cards.
But that's why we've left these, you see, to put in your coat pocket.
Yeah.
So if you get lost again, then you know, people will know where you are. There's one in your wallet as well, isn't there? But you're happy here, aren't you?
Yeah, of course I am.
Yeah.
More often than not, the burden of care falls on the family. Dispatches asked YouGov to carry out a survey of over 750 people who care for relatives with Alzheimer's. We found that 80% said they were dependent on families for help. When I'm not around, I've relied on Uncle Barry to check up on my dad. But now there's a crisis. Barry's going abroad for a major family reunion.
We're going to South Africa, Johannesburg, for 3 months, and all the family are going out there as well.
Of course, Barry's worried about leaving my dad.
We will be thinking about him all the time because, you know, he does need full-time care. He needs somebody going in there every day, take him out, get his shopping and things like that, because he cannot cope on his own. He survives, but that's about all.
So I'm going round to see Barry just before he flies to Africa.
Hello. Your favourite niece.
Did you ever see yourself in that situation where you'd be actually looking after your own older brother?
No, definitely not. But because there's just not the care available, we're having to help. It's the basic things that everyone takes for granted that most people can do. Go to the bank, draw out the money to go shopping or anything.
And he can't do any of that on his own, so...
No, and this is going to be the major problem while we're away.
Yeah.
We're going to have to try and get some of these services in, if we can get them in.
Well, we've already got as many as we can in, haven't we? But
Exactly.
we don't quite... The consistency doesn't seem to be there. It's really difficult considering the future, isn't it, really? Because I really can't bear the thought of him going into a home.
I think it's inevitable. He will have to go into some kind of home. Most people can cope with the initial stage of Alzheimer's and dementia, but as it progresses along, then it's very, very difficult. Especially like you with 2 young children as well. You know, it can break up families.
The thoughts of putting my dad into residential care is very upsetting. I'm determined to try and keep him living independently for as long as possible. I've already experienced this dilemma. My mum and dad were living in Wales when my mum developed early-onset Alzheimer's in her late 50s. She spent her dying days in a care home. 2 years ago, she passed away. Her ashes are buried at a local crematorium in Wales.
The cruel thing about my mum's experience of Alzheimer's is she was a lot younger. I mean, when we look back now, she was definitely showing signs of it in her late 50s, and she was diagnosed with early onset in her early 60s. I just remember in the last few months of my mum's illness, I used to come down every other weekend on this long journey down to Wales, and I remember walking into the home and hearing this awful, awful scream, and I just thought, oh my gosh, who's that? And it was actually my mum. Oof. And can't do it now, sorry. Oh God.
My mum was one of the 15,000 people in the UK to develop Alzheimer's before the age of 65. Early onset Alzheimer's is a horrible disease. The rate of decline is often rapid. Yvonne Saunders is 60 years old. She developed early-onset Alzheimer's in her mid-50s. Her husband Barry is 62. He's an architectural designer and runs his own business in Gillingham. To be able to look after Yvonne full-time, he's built an office at the end of his garden. Looking after his wife is very stressful. He's not had a full night's sleep for the last 5 years.
When you're caring for someone, that means you've got to literally get them up, dress them, wash them, feed them. So it was a question of trying to adapt the home to suit the need, really. And that gave me one hell of a hangover. I've got a mortgage that I wouldn't want at my time of life. When this all started off, one of the things that Yvonne said was that she didn't want me to put her into a care home. And I don't want that to happen. Ever. So, I'm fighting for that. We get by the best way we can, don't we? Hey. Hey. No, we'll carry on for as long as it takes. And if I crack up, I crack up.
Barry and Yvonne have been married for 40 years. They were childhood sweethearts. They had a traditional marriage. Yvonne ran the house while Barry ran the business. Since Yvonne became ill, Barry has received 20 hours of respite care a week. But he now works full-time and runs the house.
Put them on the table for me. They're there.
Don't push it.
Don't bring them back.
Push it.
Don't bring them back. Yeah, you can put them on that little table. All right? That's a good girl. That's it. You can put them down on the table, Vaughn.
Pardon?
Just put them on the table. From the very beginning, I've taken on all of the household chores. It was a big learning curve. What you can do in the kitchen is now very, very limited. And sometimes I see that in her face. You know, can I do this and can I do that? And no, you know, to have to say no, I'll do it, wasn't a very nice feeling. You know, wasn't a very nice feeling. Do you want some peas, darling? Yeah, love. Fine. Yeah, come with me. And I'll get you down here. What have you got there, darling? On there. This one. What's this? You know what these are? Can't think. What's this? What? They're fish. What is it? Hey? Alright, just do one of it at a time. That's it. Yeah, just you eat that bit first, darling. Just a little bit at a time. That's it. Here. Try that bit. No. Try that one, darling. Let me do it. Yeah, try that one. No. You're struggling a lot, aren't you? No.
Yvonne and Barry's daughter, Claire, also helps out. YouGov's survey conducted on behalf of dispatchers found that almost a quarter of carers of people with Alzheimer's were under the age of 40. One of the problems with Alzheimer's is it can take years to get a formal diagnosis. Yvonne is no exception. Without a diagnosis, there's no access to drugs, and it could mean that your decline is far more rapid. By the time Yvonne received a diagnosis and was offered dementia drugs, it was too late.
This year has been the hardest year. It's gone very quickly. The decline and the change in her personality, it's been very rapid. It's just having my mum around, being able to talk. You know, if I've got problems or I've got worries, I can't sit and talk to her and get advice like I used to. You've got an ongoing grieving for the person that is there in body but not in mind anymore, so that's very difficult. It's the hardest thing for me. I'd like my mum back, but it's never going to happen, unfortunately, so yeah, that's the most difficult for me. You just sort of change roles, I suppose, to a certain degree. It's good in a certain way because I know that I can be there and help and support her and help support Dad, but at the same time, sometimes you just need your mum, don't you? And that's what I miss. Very, very much. I think the time we've got left is around 5-6 months. Hopefully it won't be sooner, but that was hard enough to accept. It's only going to be that amount of time. I don't think, she's aware, but I think if it carries on as rapidly as it's carried on this year, then that's all we're looking at. So there's a lot of things we need to get prepared and talk about.
When I go around to see the family, I really want to talk to Claire. We both know what it's like to have a mum with Alzheimer's.
If you were diagnosed with Alzheimer's, do you think you'd be able to?
Oh, I would want to end it. I would want to get to a certain point where your life does start changing, and I wouldn't want to go on.
I remember one instance when I was in my mum's room with her on her own, and she was just really, really suffering. Even her breathing was laboured, everything. She was just lying there, and I really felt like putting a pillow over her head. And I don't know what stopped me, actually, but I knew it was wrong for a start, but I felt it would have been right.
Watching your mother disappear is awful, but Claire's dad, Barry, is losing his wife.
Did any doctor ever tell you how the disease would progress and what you'd have to face?
At the time we were told first that it would be 9 to 15 years. A year later that went down to 7 to 12 years.
This is life expectancy you're talking about.
Life expectancy through the illness. Then all of a sudden, the early part of this year, it was just as if Yvonne had dropped off the graph. Her abilities and the things that she could do and couldn't do, double incontinent, everything went in such a short space of time that it took your breath away.
Do you know what, it always has reminded me of having a helpless child, really, or a baby, but with none of the joy associated with that, and none of the help, actually, because when you've got a baby, you get a district health nurse coming round, and you get all the help you need. Your GP will always see you.
She has gone back to her childhood. She'll come shuffling up to me and like this, like a child, and she'll look right down at me. I might be sitting down, and she'll just go, "I love you." And that finishes me, because obviously you respond. We've been married 40 years. and you think, she's saying that, but she has no concept of it anymore, because the person that you're laying next to at night isn't your wife anymore. I'm laying there looking at the ceiling thinking, what the hell am I doing? We would do all the things that a normal married couple would do. Unfortunately, at a very early stage, sexually it goes.
Yeah.
And that hurt. That hurt a lot.
How often do you walk into here and just cry?
I think you do a couple times a week.
Yeah.
I think you can't help it. Sometimes, it's catching me out now. Sometimes you get to the point where you think, Christ, how do I go on? It is a day-to-day struggle, yeah. It'd be nice if someone from high up realised that there's something missing. They haven't got it right, they haven't got it nowhere near right. and they need to listen to carers.
Next, what to do about my dad as his health deteriorates, and I see for myself how we're failing both sufferers and carers. I've recently moved my dad into an elderly independent living complex in Portsmouth after he became ill with Alzheimer's. I was sharing the majority of care with my Uncle Barry, but since he flew to Africa for a family reunion, all the care is left to me. I'm juggling looking after my dad with working full-time and 2 young children. As the disease progresses, my dad finds reading increasingly difficult. This saddens me as he used to be a prolific reader. Photograph albums have replaced his books.
Hello, how are you? You okay, yeah? Should we have a look then, yeah? This is well worn, isn't it, hey?
Oh my goodness. The old Fleet Air Arm.
Yeah.
Dad was in the Fleet Air Arm throughout the 1950s. He married my mum in March 1960 and they had 3 children.
Do you remember meeting Mum? Where you met her?
Yeah, she was smiling.
Yeah, you always say that, yeah.
And she trotted away, and I thought, well, she won't be here again. But she did.
Yeah, for 40 odd years she was there, wasn't she?
Sorry?
40. And where was it you met her at a dance, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right.
Where were you Navy guys?
She said, you can't dance. I said, oh no, I didn't say I did.
Who's that? Who is it?
Goodness me.
I've just pointed to a picture of me taken only a couple of years ago.
I've just seen it and said it, and then it goes again.
That's mean.
I know.
I only moved my dad to Portsmouth 2 months ago. He'd been living in the family home in Wales, but I wanted him closer to me. I'm going back there to collect some of the possessions he left behind.
I'm on a very familiar route on my way to Wales, which I used to do every other weekend. It wasn't so much the drive there, although sometimes it did take hours and hours. It was just what I was going to find when I got there, and I always had to stay in a hotel because Dad wouldn't let me in the house. I don't know. Looking back on it now, I don't know how I did it. I mean, I did get very, very run down. I had shingles. I just never stopped. So this doesn't bring back very fond memories, I have to say.
After a long 300-mile drive, I'm exhausted and increasingly nervous about what state Dad's house will be in.
This is the first time I've been to this house since I moved my dad out. Oh gosh, oh dear, it's freezing. This is the kitchen, which is always immaculate. My mother would turn over in her grave. Doors off the cupboards. It's dirty. You're shaving in the kitchen sink. It's just complete chaos. This is quite poignant when I saw this, actually. He's always read. He's always got books everywhere. He's got a master your memory. Oh gosh, and that as well, my goodness. Maybe he knew something was going on and he didn't know. Didn't know what. Let's see.
Picking up Dad's mail in the hallway is just another reminder of the constant battle you face as a carer.
I've got most of his mail redirected now, but this is how difficult it is. They wouldn't redirect the mail unless I proved that I had enduring power of attorney, which I did. It took me a huge long time to try and get his mail directed. So now what have they done? They've got my name on his checkbook, but they're still sending it here. People just don't get it. What if someone with Alzheimer's had an elderly partner who was dealing with all this, and I don't know how we manage, I really don't. This is the living room, which my mum always kept so immaculately, and it just looks like Miss Havisham's been living here for... My dad was just sleeping on that old mattress, and it was filthy. I've cleared all the bedding off there. It was absolutely filthy. And it's just, I don't know, it's just like a life that's over, that's confused. Look at that. And it's just a complete disarray, and this odd little thing that he's done out here would just be bricks. I don't know. It's really upsetting, but I'm just glad he's out of here.
My dad was living in squalor. I assumed he had depression because of my mum's death, but thinking back, he probably had the early stages of Alzheimer's. For me, it's highlighted the importance of an early diagnosis. In our survey, more than a quarter of carers said those they looked after remained undiagnosed for at least 3 years. Where you live determines how quickly you receive a formal diagnosis. If you're fortunate to live near a memory clinic, you're likely to be diagnosed faster.
I didn't realise that I had that much of a problem, but having been told that I had, then I've got to accept that.
Here in Southampton, the memory clinic is one of the leading centres in Europe for dementia research. It was set up by Dr. David Wilkinson.
Copy these shapes for me. First of all, these shapes here.
Without a diagnosis, you can't get drugs. But then there's another problem. You're unlikely to get drugs until you're in the later stages of the disease. The Department of Health's Drugs Advisory Body, NICE, told dispatchers that it recommends prescribing certain drugs only when people reach the moderate stage of the disease. This is because they consider them neither cost nor medically effective at an earlier stage. Some clinicians, like Dr. David Wilkinson, have adopted a less stringent interpretation of the guidelines.
How effective is Aricept and drugs like Aricept, in your opinion?
I think they're very effective. I mean, they make a clear impact on probably about 60% of people you give them to. And what we've demonstrated in the last few years, that drugs like Aricept and also Bixa, memantine, they prevent the decline in those people who are declining.
What do you think of NICE's decision to advise against prescribing Aricept and dementia drugs for the early stages of Alzheimer's or dementia?
Oh, well, it's up there with, you know, some of the worst decisions, I think. There's no question in my mind, and I think the mind of anybody who is involved in the use of these drugs, that they do have a significant benefit in the earlier stages of the disease. And the characterization of patients with early disease as mild, I think, is also pretty scandalous, because there's nothing mild about the early stages of Alzheimer's disease.
Certainly, a lot of people don't know what treatments are available and never told what treatments are available.
I think the service is very patchy, and we do know there's a lot of postcode differences in the UK in terms of the provision of services and also for the prescription of drugs.
At the moment, how much on a daily basis would it cost to prescribe Aricept?
In the scheme of things, it's not that expensive. It's around about £900 a year, so it's about £2.50 a day, something like that. Obviously, in terms of things like cancer therapies, I mean, it's a tiny price to pay. But even until very recently, even some of the indigestion medicines were more expensive than this. And I think that there are many other conditions like epilepsy and multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's disease, which also have expensive treatments, and I don't think people quibble about that.
Dr. Wilkinson's memory clinic in Southampton is prescribing drugs to people in the early stages of the disease. Mike Richardson is 75 years old and was diagnosed with Alzheimer's 8 months ago. When he developed the disease, he became depressed and started to lose the ability to read.
This is a male, but they've had the telegraph for 40 years.
Yeah.
I look at words and I think,
what's that? And he can't work out what they are. So I thought that one was simpler to read. Neither of us like it very much, but it's better than nothing for him.
Mike has been prescribed Aricept by the Southampton clinic since he was first diagnosed, and it's had a dramatic effect on the quality of his life.
It's made a big difference. It's absolutely... I don't know what would have happened without it. I really don't. You know, I think I'd have gone right down. But no, it was good.
You're happier now?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not... I haven't got any problems at all.
He doesn't look...
I haven't got any problems, no. So he says.
Plenty of problems. We're just so very lucky that he was able to be prescribed it, because there are many that can't get it.
In the back of my mind, I can't help wondering whether Dad might not have had such a rapid decline if he'd been given drugs. As it is, I have to do his main weekly shop. There have been a few times in the past I've been in a supermarket and seen someone elderly looking a bit disorientated. Well, now that elderly person is my dad.
The thing I have to remember when I'm shopping for Dad is I can't buy anything that he might need to cook, because he can't cook basically, it's too dangerous. So bananas are brilliant because I know that he's getting some vitamins, but then otherwise really, you know, I'm getting stuff like Scotch eggs, sausage rolls, which I'd never normally buy him, but you don't need to cook them, and that's why I have to get them. Go then, yeah?
Unpaid carers are saving the government just over £6 billion a year. The burden of caring for a spouse or family member is a draining, frustrating and often very isolating experience. Our survey underlined just how isolated and stressful carers' lives can become. 41% said that they rarely or never had any respite. More shockingly, 20% said they sometimes or often feel threatened by the person they're caring for. Usually the only lifeline is a carers group. I've joined one in Portsmouth run by the Alzheimer Society.
What is the hardest part, do you think, of being a carer?
Giving up your own life. Yes. Everything's put on hold. You don't have a life to yourself. I mean, the first year you're screaming and shouting, you're crying and that. You're trying to make them do what you want them to do and that. And it suddenly dawns on you, I can't do this. I've got to change.
Sometimes the person, the ill person, is violent towards their own relatives. One lady was almost strangled, and her husband actually tried to break her arm. This doesn't come up in any of the literature, any of the searches you do. It's always the carer being the aggressor, but that isn't the case.
But if you're the only carer caring for somebody, you do feel very alone. I'd get up in the middle of the night, go and see to Mum, settle her, come back, go back to bed, and my husband didn't even know I'd gone.
I was the carer for my mother. She died about 4.5 years ago now, nearly 5 years ago. I went in with a friend one day, and my mother was standing at the front door in a little trouser suit with a few bras on top of her clothes, bare feet, a cold hot water bottle. The doors were wide open and it was winter time. There was a pot, an empty pot boiling on the stove, and she was totally bewildered. Every single week without fail I cried.
Because I don't think people who've never been touched by it really understand it. And I think there's so many misconceptions about what it is. If you went to your doctor with cancer, they don't say to you, well, go away, and when you can't breathe, come back and I'll help you. But if you've got early stages dementia, well, there's not a lot we can do. You know, when it's really bad, then we'll see if we can help you, you know.
I can see with so many of you, actually, the journeys you've had, that it has left you full of emotion, even years on, because of the traumatic nature of it.
A few days later, my dad is found wandering the streets in the early hours of the morning. I'm finding the burden of being the sole carer is taking its toll.
I got a phone call from Portsmouth Police saying that my father had been found in the middle of the town centre at 1:30 in the morning, absolutely on the verge of freezing to death. So I've got down here as soon as I can, and he's fine. And I've just left him and had to say, Dad, I've got to go because I've got to get home to the children. And I felt terrible saying that to him. But when I came out this morning, I felt awful saying to the children, I'm going to see Grandad. And honestly, I just feel like screaming sometimes because I never seem to give 100% for anything. And there is going to come a time when something has to give, and I'm not quite sure what that is at the moment. I really, really, really don't want to put my dad in a home. For me, that would be the biggest defeat, and also a huge burden of guilt. So, I don't know, I'm going to have to think of a solution once things calm down a bit, but I can't see when they will at the moment.
But I can't ignore Dad's deterioration. Even switching on the TV is a problem.
Come back. Nothing. Good God, look at that now. Well, well, oh, raining.
He wanders from room to room.
I'll get it soon. Got it somewhere. I hope so. There's quite a lot in there, but they weren't in here.
Photographs are a lifeline to a past that's slipping away.
There's a old mine. That's my lovely lady, but she had Alzheimer's, so she's dead, unfortunately. Yeah, sort of beautiful. Everybody said she was so nice, and you know, I'd do anything to bring her back, but unfortunately we can't do that.
Next, what should the government be doing to help Alzheimer's sufferers and their carers? A few nights ago, my dad was found by the police wandering around Portsmouth in the early hours, shivering with cold. It's obvious living independently is becoming a risk. I feel terribly guilty, but moving him nearer to me in London would disorientate him further, and I know he doesn't want to go into a care home, so I'm really torn.
They've got your mugshot now at the police station. They phoned me up and they said, we've got your dad here in the police station.
Like many carers, I've got to find my way through a confusing system to get home help for my dad. Public money for social care is very tight. To help me clarify things, I've decided to visit my dad's medical team, which is headed up by consultant Dr. Carol Trotter.
I think in the last few years there seems to be even tighter budgets and rationing occurring, which leaves these people like your father and others in the mild to moderate stages of dementia without much input. It's only those people with very severe behaviour problems or very, very complex needs that are funded by health.
Why is that the diagnosis, the treatment and the care of Alzheimer's so disparate? I mean, at one point, when you go to get a diagnosis, it's NHS. You go into the care system and suddenly you're being means tested when it's actually an illness.
I think this is the crux of the whole problem. If you have a physical illness, you're treated under the health system. If your care is deemed to be social, it comes under a separate budget from social services and the local authority.
But you're caring for them because they have the disease.
Exactly. So
why is it not NHS funded?
That if you have dementia and you can't remember how to wash and dress yourself, you have to pay for that care if you have the means, whereas if you have a stroke and you need a lot of care in a nursing home, you are funded by health.
The level and quality of home care can vary according to where you live. The decision as to whether Alzheimer's sufferers receive home care or not is down to a postcode lottery. In our survey of carers, fewer than half, 49%, said they got help from social services. Nearly 2/3 of councils only fully fund care when elderly people are at substantial risk. Peggy McNabb has severe Alzheimer's. Her main carer is her 83-year-old husband, Alex. They've been married for nearly 60 years and they have 3 children. In the last few months, Peggy has stopped walking.
Look. Yeah. Wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, eating the patient suffering with Alzheimer's does end up bedridden, you know, because they're completely unable to walk, completely unable to help themselves chew or drink, and it becomes extremely difficult then, you know, for people like myself, for instance, to try and kind of feed her, get her to drink, and she just, you know, deteriorates. A little drop left. Where's that? Little drop. Oh, look at that. That's it. That's good. I think the whole process of the disease really is very upsetting. You're just watching every week and every month where Peggy gets worse, you know. You're going to stand up for me now and you sit in the car then? Yeah, come on.
To give Alex some respite, he takes Peggy to a daycare centre 3 times a week. It's run by a charity, the Alzheimer's Society. This is funded by social services, but Alex also has to pay £50 a month.
Normally I get there about 10, and then I'm picking her up between 3 and half past. Which doesn't give you a great deal of time in between to do all the chores that's necessary. Time just seems to fly. Whee. There we go.
Hello, Peg. Hello, how are you today?
As Peggy's at the severe end of the spectrum, she also qualifies for 2 hours of care a day. Again, this is provided by a charity, but paid for by social services. Peggy is unable to get upstairs. She now sleeps in a bed in the kitchen.
Ready? Whee! There we go. How's that?
There you go, Peggy.
There, look at that.
All right.
All right then, Peg. Hello. You can measure then, all right?
The next morning, Julie, Alex and Peggy's daughter, is worrying about her dad just as much as she is about her mum.
Are you trying to give me a kiss? Are you trying to give me a kiss? Oh.
There's going to come a point when Dad will not be able to cope to do this on a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week basis. Dad's 83 now, he will be 84 in March, so obviously, and he's got high blood pressure, so you've got to think about his health needs as well.
Yeah, look at this. Got your dinner.
Oh, lovely.
Go on, eat your dinner.
Lovely. Lovely.
Assembling a package of care is complicated. Many families say they struggle to find a pathway through the different organisations.
I think there should be some kind of setup where the agencies actually work together to support that one person with Alzheimer's.
And have
so
a regular
that
visit,
social services and the NHS are working together.
The government is about to announce a new national dementia strategy, saying the care of Alzheimer's sufferers will be a priority. A key improvement will be the training of GPs so that they can spot the first signs of dementia.
How old am I?
It also wants people to be able to stay in their homes for longer. Heavers Court in Croydon is the kind of centre the government wants to roll out across the country. Here, NHS clinicians work alongside social workers under the same roof, creating a one-stop Alzheimer's shop.
What we've attempted to do is offer a service approach rather than simply a clinic. We'll do the assessment, if possible make a diagnosis, and then help people meet their needs from this team, so we don't pass people on to other services, so we're offering a seamless service.
If the psychologist or the psychiatrist or the occupational therapist comes back and says, oh, this lady needs to have Meals on Wheels or perhaps some help with personal care or whatever, then they can do that. That doesn't mean that somebody else from that discipline, i.e. social work, has to go out and ask all the same questions, check it all out, right, and then decide that it can happen. So it's much better for the clients as well.
Don't you think they've made this place look lovely? Now we're all quite happy here.
Croydon is offering a joined-up service, but the Alzheimer's Society has predicted it would cost an extra £600 million to roll it out across the country.
To facilitate the strategy being rolled out and actually acted upon, we would hope that each local authority, each health authority who's got responsibility for providing services will get extra finance from the Department of Health.
Critics of the National Dementia Strategy have said it's been postponed twice, and anyway, without money it won't work. But we need an urgent solution. In 15 years' time there'll be over 1 million dementia patients in the UK. Without a long-term care and funding commitment from the government, I'll continue finding it hard to cope. But like thousands of other carers, I'll carry on because I love my dad. Since he was found by the police, he's stopped wandering late at night, so for now he'll stay in his flat.
Are you managing all right now?
Good God, yeah. I take a walkies and...
Get lost sometimes?
Lost sometimes. What the bloody hell have I done? Where is it?
Oh, I know you, because that night in December actually, when the police found you, were freezing.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I was walking up there and I thought, God, I'm going to freeze here. I think I nearly did, actually.
What about the flat? Are you happy staying there?
Well, I don't know. I often think of that. It's a nice place, especially when you're in yourself one side.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would probably end up by going somewhere else.
You think so?
It just depends where.
I'm dreading what my dad will go through in the future and the decisions we're going to have to make as a family. For now, I just want to enjoy the quality time we have left.